Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In downtown Chicago, amidst the skyscrapers and daily hustle and bustle, stood the headquarters of Sterling and Company, a multinational corporation where prestige and power were everything. Inside, employees milled around the halls in suits, each eyeing the other warily, for in this world, a misstep could be costly. Samantha Hayes, 32, walked calmly toward her office. At first glance, she appeared to be an ordinary office worker, small, unassuming, and plainly dressed. But behind her calm eyes lay a determination and strength no one in the building could have imagined. Michael Sterling, 38, son of the founder and heir apparent to the empire, was berating a colleague for a minor error. His arrogance filled the room, and everyone held their breath to avoid becoming the next victim. When his eyes fell on Samantha, he thought he saw easy prey. "Hayes," he shouted, his voice echoing like a hammer in the meeting room. "Did you do your job poorly again? I honestly don't understand how you got hired." Samantha looked up calmly, her face impassive. She knew any emotional reaction would work in Michael's favor. "I'll correct this immediately, Mr. Sterling," she replied with icy politeness. But inside, a storm was brewing. Every word, every arrogant gesture from Michael had only awakened something within her. She wasn't the naive young woman he thought he was humiliating. Samantha Hayes was a former international champion in self-defense and mental strategy. Every humiliation, every injustice received, had been noted, analyzed, and used to plan a revenge Michael could never anticipate. As he continued to boast, unaware of the danger he was causing, Samantha silently promised herself, "One day you will learn that underestimating someone can be catastrophic." And that day was soon to come. The Chicago sun streamed through the conference room's large glass windows, casting rays of light onto the employees' tense faces. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Michael Sterling, always the center of attention, was ready to exert his usual power and arrogance. Samantha Hayes sat down in her chair, her laptop open in front of her, fingers poised to correct the report that had been criticized. But she knew this wasn't simply a matter of numbers, it was a test of patience and composure. Michael enjoyed humiliating those he deemed weak. "Hayes." Michael's voice cracked the air like thunder. All eyes turned toward her. "Another mistake on the financial report. Frankly, I don't understand how you got hired. Maybe you should retrain for something more simple." A murmur rippled through the room, some employees looking away in embarrassment, others suppressing a smirk at the thought of Samantha looking embarrassed. But Samantha, unfazed, looked up at Michael, her features calm and measured. "I'll correct this immediately, Mr. Sterling." Michael snickered, relishing the situation. "Oh, I'm sure you'll try. But honestly, I doubt you can keep up here." Behind her polite mask, Samantha felt her blood boil, but she knew that giving in to anger would be a mistake. Every humiliation, every hurtful word, every condescending look was recorded in her memory. She wasn't a naive employee, she was already planning her revenge, a revenge that would strike Michael where he would never expect it. After the meeting, Samantha returned to her office. No one knew that she had been an international champion in self-defense and mental strategy, capable of turning any situation around. Her carefully hidden past was now an asset. She began analyzing Michael's reactions, his weaknesses, his habits, every detail that could be used in her revenge. That day, Samantha understood a simple but powerful truth: underestimating someone like her could be catastrophic. And Michael had just made the first mistake of his life. Rain was falling gently on the Chicago skyline when Samantha returned home that evening. Her apartment, minimalist yet elegant, perfectly reflected her personality, understated, efficient, and in control. As she put down her coat, her gaze fell on the trophies and photos neatly lined up on a shelf. Each medal and certificate told a story few knew. Samantha Hayes hadn't always been this discreet assistant. A few years earlier, she had been a recognized figure in the world of martial arts and self-defense. A national and then international champion, she had faced the best opponents from around the world, winning titles and respect. But one day, Betrayed by an influential mentor and a victim of political manipulation in the professional circuit, she disappeared from the media world. She had chosen to rebuild her life away from arrogance and the spotlight, away from the men who thought they could diminish her. She remembered that betrayal as a burn she had transformed into strength. Every humiliation, every injustice, every condescending look she had received in the past had been noted, analyzed, and transformed into a strategic plan. She knew that revenge came not from immediate anger, but from patience and precision. That evening, sitting in front of her notebook, Samantha began to write. She detailed every interaction with Michael Sterling, analyzing his arrogance, his weaknesses, and his habits. Her strategy was taking shape slowly but with relentless clarity. Each step had to be calculated: humiliate Michael in the same way he had humiliated others, but publicly, irreversibly, and elegantly. Samantha knew she couldn't settle for petty retaliation. Michael Sterling needed to learn a definitive lesson: underestimating someone could have catastrophic consequences. And she would prepare that lesson carefully. Before going to bed, she gazed at her trophies one last time. A spark of a glorious past shone in her eyes. The world had forgotten Samantha Hayes. But soon, Michael and everyone who had doubted her would remember. And this time, revenge would be perfect. The next day, Samantha woke up with her determination intact. She knew that revenge wasn't just about direct confrontation, but about subtle strategy and perfect timing. Michael Sterling was arrogant and self-assured, and that was precisely what made him vulnerable. That evening, a major charity gala was being held at Sterling and Company. Michael was scheduled to appear there to enhance his public image. Samantha, with her experience and discretion, decided to attend, but not as an official guest. She snuck backstage, silently observing the interactions and noting every detail: Michael's maneuvers, his contacts, and especially the way he manipulated others to promote himself. Samantha subtly engaged Michael's key partner, an influential investor. Without revealing her true identity, she slipped in a few carefully chosen pieces of information, hinting that some of Michael's recent decisions could jeopardize the company. The words were precise, calibrated to sow doubt without leaving any direct traces. The investor frowned, visibly concerned. Meanwhile, Michael, busy smiling and giving hugs, noticed nothing. He laughed, confidently, unaware that every word Samantha spoke was a piece of a puzzle he would only understand once it was complete. After the gala, Samantha went home. She knew her first move had paid off. She had begun to chip away at Michael's image, to introduce cracks into his aura of invincibility. But she also knew this was only the beginning. The real confrontation would come later, when all the elements were in place for a spectacular upset. That night, watching the city lights twinkle in the rain, Samantha felt more alive than ever. Revenge was an art, and she had just laid the first stone in its web. Michael Sterling thought he was playing a game he knew. He was about to discover that the city's most formidable player had already taken a stand. The following days were spent preparing. Samantha knew that a complete revenge required allies and a comprehensive strategy. She contacted influential former colleagues and friends, people she had known during her international career and who had always respected her intelligence and resilience. There was David Clark, a former financial analyst turned strategic consultant for several leading companies, capable of detecting hidden weaknesses and errors in executive decisions. And then there was Maya Thompson, a communications and public relations expert who could transform subtle information into powerful messages designed to influence opinion. Together, they formed a small but formidable circle. At their first secret meeting in a chic Chicago cafe, Samantha laid out her plan. Michael Sterling is arrogant, reckless, and completely blinded by his ego. Every humiliation he has inflicted can become our tool. But we must act with precision. No blind anger, no impulsiveness. Every move must be strategic. David nodded, impressed. She's right. We can start by discreetly circulating information to her key investors and partners, making them doubt her decisions, while remaining invisible. Maya added, and we can prepare a subtle media campaign that will reinforce the cracks in his public image. Michael always boasts of being infallible. That's exactly what makes him vulnerable. Samantha smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt that her combined strength with that of her allies would make revenge a complete work. Every action, every word, every encounter was calculated to weaken Michael without ever giving the impression of a direct attack. Meanwhile, Michael continued his usual maneuvers, unaware that his personal empire was beginning to falter. Every smile, every hug he distributed was watched and analyzed by Samantha and her team. Samantha's unexpected allies became silent instruments of her strategy, each playing a crucial role in preparing for the ultimate confrontation. This alliance marked a turning point. Samantha was no longer alone. She now had the resources and collective intelligence to transform every past humiliation into a masterpiece of revenge. Michael Sterling thought he controlled everything around him. He would soon discover that underestimating Samantha Hayes was the biggest mistake of his life. A few weeks later, a major strategy meeting was taking place in the Sterling and Company Tower. All the senior executives and key investors were present, ready to review the company's recent performance. Michael Sterling, confident and flamboyant, stood at the center, distributing smiles and handshakes, convinced that nothing and no one could destabilize him. Samantha, this time, was officially invited as an external consultant for a communications project, a role her team had meticulously organized. Her entrance was discreet, but her sharp eyes observed Michael's every move, his partner's every reaction. She knew exactly how and when to strike. As he launched into his presentation, boasting about his successes and absolute control over the company, Samantha began asking subtle but pointed questions. "Mr. Sterling, can you explain how the investment decision for this project was evaluated? There appear to be inconsistencies between forecasts and actual results." A murmur rippled through the room. Michael, surprised by the precision of the question, frowned. We followed all standard procedures," he stammered, feeling his investors' attention focused on him. Samantha didn't stop there. Calmly and professionally, she added, "Some reports suggest that some decisions were made without full consultation with the management team. Perhaps we can clarify these points?" The investors exchanged glances, some showing concern. Michael felt the air around him shift. His confidence wavered for the first time in public. Samantha, meanwhile, continued to observe and subtly guide the discussion, letting her allies operate in the shadows to support every doubt sown. At the end of the meeting, Michael left the room, tense and confused. No one knew exactly what had happened, but everyone sensed that he wasn't completely in control. Samantha, on the other hand, felt the first crack in her empire. Her plan was progressing perfectly. That day marked a turning point. Michael Sterling was no longer invincible. Samantha had used her patience, strategy, and calm to undermine his public facade. And that was just the beginning. A few days after the strategy meeting, Michael Sterling was still shaken. His colleagues had noticed his unusual restlessness, and some investors were beginning to ask questions behind closed doors. Michael, accustomed to being in control of every situation, felt the weight of uncertainty for the first time. Samantha decided it was time for the next step, direct confrontation. She waited until Michael's office was empty of visitors and knocked gently on his door. Without waiting for an answer, she entered, her calm, confident gait betraying her confidence. Michael stood up abruptly from his chair, surprised and irritated. "What are you doing here?" he asked, trying to hide his nervousness behind a mask of authority. Samantha crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on him with icy intensity. "We need to talk, Michael. It's time some truths were revealed." Michael chuckled nervously, thinking he could intimidate Samantha with his usual arrogance. "Really? And what truths would you have to tell me, little assistant?" A cold smile played on Samantha's lips. "You underestimated me. You think I'm weak, insignificant. But what you don't know is that I was never that person." She took a step forward, raising her hand slightly to reveal a carefully prepared folder. The documents revealed her past skills, her credentials, and her experience as an international champion in self-defense and mental strategy. Each word was chosen to hit Michael where he thought he was untouchable, his ego and his control over the company. Michael stepped back, stunned, unable to hide his surprise. The woman he had thought he had humiliated was not only capable of equalizing him, but she now held proof of her own strategic superiority. You were, he stammered, searching for words. But Samantha continued, implacable, every humiliation you've inflicted, every arrogance, every error in judgment, it's all part of this plan. And you've just fallen into my trap. Michael, for the first time, felt the dizziness of vulnerability. His world, built on control and arrogance, was beginning to crack. Samantha, calm and imposing, had just restored the balance of power. This confrontation marked a decisive turning point. Michael Sterling was no longer the undisputed master. And Samantha Hayes, finally revealing the strength he had never suspected, had just shown him that revenge could be elegant, precise, and relentless. A week later, Sterling and Company held a special media event to announce its new partnerships and strengthen its public image. Michael Sterling, confident and flamboyant, prepared to shine in the spotlight, doling out hugs and smiles as always. But little did he know that Samantha Hayes had carefully orchestrated the moment to turn the scene into her own revenge. Samantha arrived at the event under her official identity as a consultant. She had chosen this strategic location. Journalists, investors, and key executives from the company would all be present. Every detail of the organization, from the invitations to the speeches, had been carefully planned to create the ideal setting. As Michael took the stage to deliver his speech, Samantha quietly stepped up behind him, her eyes fixed on every movement, every word. Then, just as he began to boast about his accomplishments, she took the microphone with the authority and grace of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it is time to clarify some information regarding Sterling and Company. His voice, clear and calm, silenced the room instantly. The surprised reporters raised their cameras. Michael turned around, mouth agape, unable to understand how Samantha had spoken. With calm precision, Samantha unveiled the evidence of her discoveries, strategic errors, hasty decisions, and overlooked consequences of Michael's actions. Each revelation was supported by subtle documents and testimony, elegantly yet relentlessly presented. The room was in shock. Investors exchanged worried glances, journalists eagerly noted every word. Michael tried to defend himself, stammering, but his arrogance betrayed him. Every gesture, every clumsy word reinforced the impact of the revelation. Samantha ended her speech by fixing Michael with an icy stare. Underestimating someone can be a costly mistake. I hope this moment serves as a lesson to you. Silence hung for a few seconds, then a murmur rippled through the room, quickly followed by congratulations and murmurs of admiration for Samantha. Michael, publicly humiliated, felt his control slipping away. The woman he had thought weak had just surpassed him and turned all the attention in her favor. That day, Samantha Hayes didn't just get revenge, she demonstrated that strength lies not in intimidation, but in strategy, patience, and self-control. Michael Sterling had just learned, in the most public way possible, that his arrogance came at a price. The days following the event were a living nightmare for Michael Sterling. The press had extensively covered Samantha Hayes' speech, highlighting her revelations with powerful headlines and detailed analyses. Social media went wild, commenting on every detail of the public humiliation. For Michael, the impact was immediate and brutal. At the office, investors began asking pressing questions. Some questioned his past decisions, others demanded accountability for questionable projects he had backed. Even his most loyal staff seemed to hesitate, casting worried glances and whispering among themselves. The normally confident Michael found himself on the defensive, stammering out clumsy explanations. Meanwhile, Samantha watched with satisfaction. She had never sought to humiliate for the sake of it, her revenge was calculated and just. Every crack in Michael's public image reinforced her plan and underscored her own strength. She knew he had to learn a vital lesson: arrogance and intimidation come at a price. His most influential business partners began demanding revisions and stricter control of his decisions. Michael realized that his empire, built on his charisma and dominance, was now fragile. Even within his family, some members began to whisper that his reputation had been seriously damaged. Samantha, for her part, continued to move forward calmly. Her strategic allies, David and Maya, had prepared a perfect follow-up, financial analyses, reports, and discreet communications reinforcing the credibility of her revelations. Michael, isolated and overwhelmed, began to understand that underestimating Samantha Hayes had been the biggest mistake of his life. For the first time, he saw the direct consequences of his past actions. Every humiliation he had inflicted, every arrogance he had displayed, was now coming back to haunt him. And Samantha, elegant, professional, and impassive, remained in control. This chapter of Michael Sterling's life was over. The arrogant man who believed himself invincible had just discovered the power of a well-orchestrated revenge. Samantha, invincible, had transformed his patience and intelligence into an undeniable triumph. The following weeks were a complete reversal of fortunes. Sterling and Company's stock suffered a shock, with some investors demanding a change in management and tighter oversight. Michael Sterling, still reeling from the public humiliation, saw his image crumble further with each passing day. Samantha Hayes, for her part, had become a respected and admired figure. Prestigious job offers poured in. Companies eager to benefit from her strategy, vision, and poise contacted her directly. She was offered opportunities to become a senior consultant, lead transformation projects, and even participate in international conferences to share her experience and resilience. Despite these tempting offers, Samantha wasn't just looking to capitalize on her personal victory. For her, this rematch was a demonstration. No one should be intimidated with impunity. Her triumph carried a clear message: intelligence, patience, and strategy trump arrogance and brutality. Michael, meanwhile, was facing the real-world consequences of his actions. Some partners were leaving the firm, others were demanding meetings to re-evaluate his past decisions. His colleagues, who had previously feared him, no longer respected him in the same way. Even within his family, murmurs of concern and criticism could be heard. Every step he took seemed to be a reminder of his public failure. Samantha, now invincible in her calm and poise, watched the situation with satisfaction. She had transformed her initial humiliation into a complete, strategic, and elegant victory. Michael Sterling had learned the hard way that underestimating someone could be disastrous. And as Samantha moved forward in her career and life with confidence and dignity, she knew that her greatest achievement wasn't simply humiliating Michael, it was demonstrating the power of patience, intelligence, and self-control in a world where arrogance often seemed to rule. A few months later, Samantha Hayes' life had completely changed. She walked the streets of Chicago with a newfound serenity, observing people and enjoying a sense of freedom she had never known. Prestigious collaboration offers continued to pour in, but she chose each project wisely, guided by her passion and vision. Michael Sterling, meanwhile, now lived in the shadow of his own failure. Every move, every decision was scrutinized by his colleagues, his partners, and even his family. The woman he had believed to be weak and insignificant had not only gained the upper hand, but had also publicly proven that he was not invincible. His arrogance, which had been his strength, had become his greatest weakness. Samantha still remembered the day Michael had humiliated her in that meeting. She smiled softly, recognizing that this affront had been the trigger for a profound transformation. Revenge had never been a matter of anger for her, it had been a tool of justice, power, and control. Sitting in a park, she watched the sunset, illuminating the city's skyscrapers. The lesson was clear: true strength lies not in intimidation or arrogance, but in resilience, strategy, and patience. Those who underestimate others often discover their error too late. Michael Sterling, for all his power and wealth, had learned this lesson the hard way. Samantha, on the other hand, marched confidently into the future, invincible in her dignity and poise. The entire city seemed to echo with her quiet triumph. The storm had passed, but it had left behind a changed woman, stronger and more respected than ever. And so, Samantha Hayes continued her life, a victory in hand, a free spirit, and a lesson etched in her memory for all those who thought they could intimidate her. Underestimating someone can have terrible consequences, but being patient, intelligent, and strategic turns injustice into triumph.